28th edition of the Tahoma School Board meeting. We've got 4 or 5 regular attendance recommendations for the choice tonight. And we've got DT joining us on side. Hello, good to see you. And she's going to lead us with the pledge. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda item 2.01. May I please have a motion to approve our regular meeting agenda?
I move to approve our regular meeting agenda.
I second.
Moved in Grant, seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Vote aye, and that passes 5-0. Thank you. 4-0, pardon me. Susan saying. We do have one public comment tonight. I'm going to read a statement before we get going on this. As a reminder, each person will be given 3 minutes per topic to comment, and a maximum of 20 minutes per any one topic will be allowed. Speakers whose comments are less than 3 minutes in length may not defer their remaining time to others. If there are multiple speakers on one topic, speakers may be limited to points of view not yet expressed. Any person wishing his or her comments retained as part of the permanent record may submit a prepared statement to the board secretary prior to the oral presentation. The president may interrupt or terminate an individual's statement when it's too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Comments and concerns relative to district personnel will not be heard in public. Rather, they should be directed through the complaints concerning school personnel or programs policy 4220. Formal presentations must be scheduled with the superintendent in writing no later than Tuesday noon, 1 week preceding the regular meeting. We have one public comment tonight from Val Hagedorn. Hi, Val.
So thank you, Val Paganelli, former school board member and community member. So I'm here tonight just to offer celebration as well as critique. This is a celebration. I've been excited to see this. Unfortunately, I won't get to stay, but I am excited that that's part of our district. What I want to comment on is last board meeting, which happened to fall on Valentine's Day, so thank you for giving up your time to be here at that time. But walking away from listening to that meeting, for me and perhaps others in the community, I just wanted to offer some overarching views that may be worth considering. One, I want to celebrate that the ad hoc budget committee is in place and is at work, but I also want to, in thanking the community and in thanking the district in getting to that place after a 4-year journey and to accomplish that, is to be cautious as to how quickly conclusions may start to be drawn by a group that is learning. And so what I heard were all early discussions about potential levels of levies, etc., at a time when learning is taking place and an opportunity to really investigate what we have been doing before making those kinds of decisions, I believe will be better service to the district. The other thing I'm excited to participate in is the Tahoma 100 and having a voice, and I hope the community participates in that. Because part of the dissonance that I then experienced as a community member and former board member responsible for the district through policy were a couple of policies that now are on your consent agenda tonight that had not been updated for a lot of years. And were being updated last time, and I heard no discussion from the board questioning that, relative to some important things that involve how we pay employees when they're on jury duty and how we reimburse for goods and services through warranty and the checks and balances that are in place for that. So never having served as president of the board, I presumed that policy was in force, and to hear that it was operationally handled differently and being a little lighthearted about the fact that it hadn't been adjusted in years, to me is a concern. So at the same time that you're asking the community to participate, you're talking about new levies, and we have policies that the board is responsible for that are non-operational relative to how we run the district. I want to make sure that that audit of policies that when I came on the board I thought was really important is in fact done, and is done diligently before coming to the community for services that may not be operational under policies that are current. So I just wanted to offer that. Those two agenda items are on your consent agenda tonight. I would have appreciated some dialogue amongst the board about those. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 4.01, student board representative report, and the VP is here, and she got a report for us.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to discuss, and this connects to our Tahoma Care School of Climate and Culture, is that the high school is having their annual Bear Den retreat. That's not this weekend, but the weekend after on the 10th and 11th. And this kind of just allows high school students the opportunity to come and get closer together. I really students of all grades do this, so a lot of the times, like, a bunch of friendships form through these 2-day camps that otherwise wouldn't happen. And it's just a good opportunity for students to learn leadership skills, which ultimately just makes them stronger and a better Tahoma community. And then another thing I wanted to highlight were with the goal of high expectations recently, as like sports have been switching. Spring sports just started yesterday, and there have been a lot of good accomplishments being made with winter sports. Wrestling and boys swim and dive, they just had their state competitions, and both the girls and boys wrestling team did really well. Same with boys swim and dive. And then also basketball, both the girls and boys are competing at the Tacoma Dome, so that's a really good accomplishment. I believe the girls are playing tomorrow and then the boys on Friday, so that's really exciting. And then also the Tahoma High School band went to Disneyland over the winter break, so that's another accomplishment. And then also for DECA and HOSA, which are like our business and medical clubs at our school, they also have their state competitions coming up. Then in regards to partnerships, Camp Casey is happening for the first time since the pandemic. I believe the last one happened was like 4 years ago. So that's really exciting as well. And then through that, it's allowing high schoolers who are the ones who are the counselors for the 5th graders to kind of connect with one another. And it's a really cool opportunity for these older students to mentor younger ones and just have this kind of fun camp experience. I remember my camp experience. I went to a different school, but it was still really fun just getting to go explore nature, connect with other people, and just like kind of be away from home, which is kind of probably for a lot of these 5th graders. Another thing that relates to partnerships that's happening at our school is there's going to be a blood drive held by HOSA, which is our Future Health Professionals Club. And students have, for the most part, already signed up if they want to participate. But having this at our school is allowing students during school hours to donate blood, which is very impactful for our community. So I feel like that's a very beneficial thing that's happening. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention connects to our Tahoma Care's goal of equity, and that's in regards to the Culture Fair, which happened for the first time last year. And it's happening again on March 21st, which is a Tuesday night. And it's open to the entire community. There's going to be lots of performances. There's going to be student-presented booths with lots of information. And it's overall just a great opportunity to come and learn about different cultures and just the diversity that we have growing within the Neighborhood Valley. And that's all for tonight. So thank you, guys.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Exciting things going on. That brings us to section 5 of our agenda, which is the presentation, discussion, and action items. As we move into this section, I'll just remind my fellow board directors that we agree to use round robin to ensure that each member has an equal opportunity to speak. We'll keep our discussion length for agenda items to 20 minutes, which I will monitor, and individual board members' discussions to 3 minutes per agenda item, which Mrs. Wheeler will monitor for us. Each director's time will begin with the first word they speak, and we'll continue through the responses that are provided. Moving on to agenda item 5.01 is our Tahoma High School Future Filmmakers and Video Production Program. We've got some students here at the dais. We'll give this presentation, answer some questions for us. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Natalie Cuthbert. I'm a fourth-year video production student and a senior here at Tahoma High School.
I'm Evan Bufflin, and pretty much all the same, fourth-year video production student and senior at Tahoma High School.
So today we're going to talk to you guys about our Hollywood trip that we went on, as well as a little bit about our program.
Is that all video?
a cheater cause I'm feeling low key. You feel me? Truth be told, I'ma always show the real me. It's chilly, bust down curving with the match of Richard Millie. Flyer than an eagle when I'm touching down a Billy. Big 9 coupe, Lil Wayne, no sit drop. Ain't no laying up, I'm just drilling in no pillar. Got a roll, skirt out the door with these.
Another week. More or less. What's in the schedule that the people gotta know?
Question. What kind of bear is best? That's a ridiculous question. False. Tahoma bear. That's not even a real bear. Fact. Speeding kills bears. Bears, speeding, school lunch pizza. Bears don't. Wait. What are you doing?
While the ideas as submitted for it feel wild to many, provides insight into who we are as people. His ideas on the superego, id, and ego present situations and an early explanation onto our unconscious desires and our driving morals.
That's very hard! I gotta use the thing!
Just for a small explanation, that was just a small highlight of the multitude of projects that our program has made this year. These were just some little clips from it. But next we wanted to talk about
our Hollywood trip and why we decided to go on this trip.
Okay, that's better now. All right, so here we go. Okay, so for me personally, I applied to Dodge College of Film and Media Arts this year, and it was kind of in the back of my head when I did it because it seemed like this big thing that was kind of impossible for me because it's such a crazy good school. But actually getting to go on this trip and see the college itself was really important for me because actually getting to go there and be on campus and see what I could possibly be at was a lot better than possibility for me to actually go there. So that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to go was because I wanted to actually see where I could possibly be going. And then also, I have always wanted to be in industry. It's my dream to work in it. So I knew it would be touring places like Warner Brothers and Universal Studios. So actually getting to go and see the types of jobs that I might work in the future was another big reason why I would like to go on the trip.
So some of the reasons that I went on the trip were really to get an idea of the wide variety of jobs in the film industry. When you think of movies, you think of like directors, actors, and editors. Those are like kind of the big three, but there's like hundreds of people, thousands of people sometimes that work on movies, and there's a lot more than meets the eye. And so we got to visit a lot of the prop houses at places like Warner Brothers and Universal to kind of see a little bit behind the scenes of how they actually put these scenes together. And we also got to go to a place called Eastern Costume, which does a lot of costumes for shows and movies, and it kind of really showed, a different side to the industry that, you don't usually think about when you're watching a movie.
Okay, so we next wanted to talk about our biggest takeaways from the trip and what was kind of the main thing was like, wow, when we got back. So for me personally, I wanted to talk about two things, and first was the quality of the film schools down there. So up in the upper left corner, this is a soundstage at Chapman, which is Dodge College of Media Arts, and right underneath is a soundstage at Warner Brothers, and you can see how similar these are. So it really shows how the film schools there are setting you up for that next step in the industry. So I thought that was really interesting. Same thing with this picture here on the film school quality side. It is a soundboard in LA Film School. And then over here, this is a soundboard in Warner Brothers. And again, you can see how similar they are. So that was really amazing to me, was how good of quality the film schools were there. The other thing was what Evan talked about earlier is the job opportunities and just the multitude of job opportunities there. I thought the same thing about the Eastern costume. It was crazy to think that there's someone out there whose job is to find all these costumes and give them to anyone who's looking for them to create a movie. So I thought that was really cool. Same thing with up in the upper left corner of the job opportunities one. That is a sound studio in Warner Bros. Where they go and they put all different pieces of sound together for every shot. So you have Foley sound, you have dialogue, you have music. And there's someone there whose job is to sit there and piece all those together and make them together for every shot. Another thing you never would have thought about. Down below is Brett Bachman. He is a Tahoma graduate, so we got to go meet with him because he's an editor in industry now. So that was really cool to see someone who I could relate to because he was in my shoes at one point. So it was really awesome to get to talk to him about his experience living there. And then finally, again with this is an ADR studio, which is something I'd never heard of before. And it's where actors will come in and re-record their lines if something went wrong during production. So just so many little things that I never would have thought about until I went on this trip as jobs in the future.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines as some of the stuff, just the different types of film schools that they had. You know, we went to LA Film School, which is more of a technical school, and then we went to Chapman Dodge College, which was more of a traditional four-year university, and just seeing kind of the different styles of learning and opportunities that you have, the different pathways that you can take kind of depending on what feels right for you, was really interesting. And as well as a variety of in-industry jobs, as I already touched on, just we went on a tour to Warner Brothers Studios with one of the directors of sound, and just the wide range of jobs that people have in the sound department alone is, it's amazing, and it's something that a lot of people don't think about. You know, they just they look at a movie and they think, I'm seeing this, but so much of what you're seeing is also influenced by the sound. And it just all comes together into one big project, and it was cool to see all of those individual pieces.
Okay, so next I wanted to talk about how the Hollywood trip impacted our future plans. So for me, again, I'm going to talk about my college decisions. I really think that I would have completely pushed Chapman to the side if I hadn't gone on this trip, and I would have thought, this is impossible for me. I'm not even going to think about going here. But after actually going and getting to take the tour, talk to them, see other kids that were there working and who actually got to go to the film school, made me realize that this is possibly a realistic option for me. And yeah, so now I've been doing as much as I can to be able to get into this school, and I really think that if I would have gone on this trip, I wouldn't have done that. So this is pretty exciting for me.
Another huge thing is again the career paths, because in video production I've been personally worked on a lot of different things, and just keeping the door open and seeing what specific jobs I might want to actually move into and specialize in, by kind of seeing how big their roles are in the actual industry was very useful, and will continue to be useful as I make decisions about what my plan is in the future.
Okay, so next we wanted to just talk a little bit about our program as well, because our program and the Hollywood trip go hand in hand. So first off, I wanted to talk about the different courses that we have. So do you want to start with 3, 1, and 2?
Yeah, sure. So video production 1 is mostly an introductory class to the program. It's taking people who sometimes have never seen an editing software, never pressed record on a camera, and really kind of getting them introduced into the pieces of what it's the tasks and whatever you have to do to put together a video, and not just any video, like a film specifically. And in Video 2, that is the first year of the advanced program. So people in Video 2 are mostly there to kind of learn from the Video 3 and Video 4 students and kind of build up their skills and their really understand what it's like to work on a team in advanced video production and put together these bigger projects like short films and video announcements.
So Video 3 is moving more into a leadership position in the program, You're starting to help out the video team students. It's big on creating announcements for our school. So you're starting to make those announcement pieces by yourself rather than working with an older student to create them. So it's definitely more of a transition into that more unique, like self-directed version. And then for fourth year students and vocational leaders, this is where you have the freedom. It's more about creating your personal projects. What are you interested in? What equipment do you want to learn? And every day we get to walk into the classroom and choose what we want to learn that day. And there's so much to learn because of all the equipment that we have, that we basically get to learn everything every day if we want to. And that leads us into our industry standard equipment, which is what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so
Okay. So we'll just start. So right here we have our Canon C70, which is a Netflix approved camera. It shoots in up to 4K, 60 FPS. It's an incredible camera. It's my personal favorite to use. It's extremely versatile, and it is sitting on top of one of our Ronin RS3s, which are gimbals. And basically gimbals, their job is to stabilize the camera, make sure that when you're holding it and your hands are super shaky, you're not going to see that translate onto the actual video. And so this is how, shows and movies get extremely smooth footage without having to necessarily have extremely steady hands. And yeah, it's an amazing tool to just get the best footage possible, and the range of utility in that camera and all of the cameras is industry standard. And this is the Ronin 4D. Now we just got this one this year. This one's cool because what you see there on the gimbal, that is two separate things, is the camera and the gimbal. This one has the gimbal built into the camera, and it can shoot up to 6K, and it also has an extra dimension in the gimbal, so it can go up and down smoothly, and not just in the normal three dimensions, which is why it's called 4D. And all the camera stuff is detached from the lens, which is what allows it to do this. And that is our most powerful camera currently in the program.
Okay, and then for our Blackmagic, this is another Netflix approved camera. It's industry standard and it's great quality. The cool thing about it is that we have 4 different lenses. All the lenses are different focal length. So whether you want to, it makes you be really detail oriented with your shooting. So if you want to be really detailed in a close up, you can use one of our lenses that can do that. And then we have like a variety, so you can take the steps all the way up to if you want a really wide shot. So that's the really cool thing about our Blackmagic camera. It's also good with shooting in the dark, so it has all the adjustments for that, so that you can still see if you're shooting like out in the woods or something, or at nighttime, or whatever works for that. And then we also wanted to talk about some of our other equipment as well, because it's not just about cameras in the film industry. So one of my favorites is the DaVinci Color Board. So this is really cool for color correction and color grading. On most software, you can technically color correct in the software. Let's say you have a small little thing about this big that you can move back and forth to change color. Using this, we can change something this big. You can make really minor adjustments, everything that you need, and it's a lot more detailed. So a big thing about film is changing the actual colors on the screen. That's what makes it look so cinematic. And sometimes like you're in another world, is color. So the fact that we have this color board to allow us to do that is really awesome. Another thing is our live streaming system. This is another way that students can learn about different types of jobs in the industry. And it's also really great because we use it for the community as well. So during COVID, this was great because things like choir concerts and plays, we were able to have the video production students live stream them. And that way people could watch from home, parents, whatever, when they could come in. And yeah, so students will have headsets, some of them will be in the pack, where they're running the cameras and be able to speak with other students that are sitting back in the room using the live streaming system, switching between cameras. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, and our other two major things are the amazing green screen that we have. Now this is new. still fairly new, and the way it's built, it allows for completely seamless transitions. Basically, you could stand in the middle there, and you could shoot a full person and key out the background extremely easily. The wall is built to flow directly into the floor, and that combined with the lights overhead creates a really clean and smooth green background that is extremely easy to work with. And last but not least, our Sony professional headsets. Now, these are also new, and before we had the more traditional headsets that can be found throughout the school district. These ones just allow for better sound. They're more comfortable when you're putting in 5 hours editing after school, which has happened. And yeah, they're for the students, that's something that I know we've been advocating for years. Is we need new headsets, and we finally got them. So.
Okay, and lastly, we wanted to talk about what we're hoping to get out of the rest of our senior year because we're looking at less than a semester left here. So for me personally, I really want to work on creating a couple more short films because that's my favorite thing to do. This is one that we just won an award for, me and some of my friends. So yeah, I really love creating them. So I'm hoping to create as much as possible in these last couple months. And then also, I don't really know how to use the color board very well, but I'm really interested in moving into color correction, especially when I go to college. So I'm hoping to get a jump start on that by learning how to use ours. And I also would love to learn how to use the Ronin 4D because honestly, this camera is something that I probably won't have access to anytime in college. So it's amazing that I get access to it now. So I'd love to learn it while I still can.
Oh. Yeah, and some stuff that I want to do is, I really want to make the absolute best video announcements possible because, the whole school sees it and they're required to see it. So I want to make it at least, an enjoyable experience and provide some entertainment along with the information that we have to give. And also, I'd love to learn Adobe After Effects, which is an extremely powerful program that when paired with what we already know in Premiere Pro being certified, it can be an extremely, extremely powerful asset to add just a wider range of effects and special effects that we can include in stuff like video announcements and short films to just make a better overall product.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
Great presentation. I'm sure we all have questions. Before we do, can we get a thumbs up so we keep moving? The presentation, great. Who'd like to kick us off? Director Paragraph?
Sure.
All right.
Great job, you two. That was just really fun to watch, and you're very, very entertaining to listen to as well. So great job. When you guys were able to meet with the gentleman, I don't recall his name, in California on your trip.
Yes, Brett.
Was he able to give you any feedback how, I'm assuming he went through the 4 years of the program at Tahoma here?
He was actually only in video production 1 his senior year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How did he talk anything about how prepared he felt, or how maybe that year helped him prepare for what he's doing now? Or was he able to give you any of that feedback?
Sure. Yeah, he really, emphasized how much of a mentor Mr. Pegg was, and how having access to that equipment allowed him to explore a lot of his, creative, desires in making films. He actually made something like an hour-long documentary on the football team, which made it, I believe, to playoffs. Maybe even the state championship. I'm not 100% sure, but it was a great year, and he documented the whole thing. And that was really what made him decide he wanted to do this for a living. And yeah, he said that experience was, it was for a senior project, and that was really what convinced him.
That's great. Thank you, and good luck to both of you. Be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of say one wonderful job with the presentation. Thank you so much for your time. kind of the same questions is looking at your 4 years now and seeing where you're going to go now. Is there anything looking back that you would like to see the school or district done differently to help you prepare for college and your future career?
I mean, it's 100% out of the control, but the COVID year was a little tough. Because everything was obviously online. You don't really have access to the equipment. That's not a district thing. Overall, the district, in terms of the program, has been amazing in giving us the ability to fund some of these purchases, which are just incredible things to work with that most colleges don't even have. And it's really cool, extremely lucky to have access to these kinds of things without committing however much money it costs to go to a college.
I think it was a lot harder for the kids who are third years right now because their first year was online. And I think the hard part about that, or kids who aren't even in the program anymore, is because your first year is really what helps you decide to move into your second year. And I think being online, a lot of kids decided not to move into their second year because they didn't know anything about the program at the time. But there wasn't really much we could do in that because it's such a hands-on class that it's really hard to do online. So.
You all are brilliant, and I feel like I have a million questions for you, but I'm going to try and contain myself. So, first question is actually from Mr. Haig. I'm curious, when you all take the trip, do we have scholarships available for students who may want to go, but their family isn't in a place to financially afford it?
Yeah, really, for the last 10 years, that's something that I have offered up front, is if you have financial difficulty, then reach out and we will work on that. I think in the 10 years, I've only had one family come forward, and we had some community support that helped them. We had some funds available through our counseling department that helped them. So we offer that, but we haven't had to utilize it very often.
Okay, thank you. And I also know that this is obviously a hot class to get into, and it's very popular, so I want to say thank you to you for all of the above and beyond things that you have done to make it possible for as many kids to take these courses as possible, and we're just so grateful to you. You are such a gift to this district and our students, so thank you. And my last question is for you all. I'm curious, as I'm hearing you talk about all of these different equipment and the different things that you've learned, do any of the students in the program end up becoming YouTubers? I mean, do you learn entrepreneurial skills? Are you the guy? Are you the guy with all the followers? Yes. Okay, so can you tell us about that?
What would you like to know?
I want to know everything. So tell us, so you started a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us just quickly?
So I started it, and it's almost like, it's been like over 5 years now. And currently, it sits at just over 1 million subscribers. Yeah, I mean, it's just been a thing that I've watched YouTube for as long as I can remember, and I wanted to, I looked up to all the people that I watched, so I wanted to try it out, and so I decided to look into some of the equipment, some of the stuff that I required, was required to make it, and then just started making stuff, and then pretty quickly I was like, I just want to keep making stuff better and better, and so I tried to, every single video improving something, and then eventually I decided to shift completely what I was doing, and then that first video completely took off, and it's just been a wild ride since then. Yeah.
Congratulations, that is remarkable. Congratulations, we're so proud of you. Truly.
So real quick too, Evan's pretty humble. He puts in a lot of hours. So take your job and my job and multiply it by 2, and that's how much time he puts in to the work that he's doing. And just recently, he has been hired by another gentleman who is working for somebody who's really big in YouTube, and Evan's been hired to take over his content. And I will say he's making more than a 1, 2, 3 year teacher would be making in our district just for that. So his big dilemma right now is literally what to do next year. Whether to ride this and see how far he goes with it, whether to go to a 4-year college, a 2-year college. but it's really trying to figure out what that 13th year plan is, because there's so much there.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's that?
Oh,
Director Pendergraft ran out of time. She's not allowed to ask any other questions, so she's trying to get some more questions over here.
What's your channel?
But the name of my channel? Yeah. It's Evan MC Gaming, all one word. Yeah. I do mostly Minecraft related stuff. I try to make it like as high quality and cinematic as possible. So I've kind of moved into it's essentially like making kind of like a movie / documentary, but like in the game. Yeah. So that's kind of what set my channel apart, I guess. But
Well, I'll echo my colleagues' remarks and congratulate both of you and thanking you for such a wonderful and poised presentation here tonight. And your passion and enthusiasm for this subject is clear, and I know that's coming from your mentorship from alum already from this program, Mr. Haig as well. I love this program. My son's in Pro 2 and was in Pro 1 COVID kid, so it's tough. This program is just so much in so many different vectors. Like the fact that you're producing this material that supports the school is amazing. The fact that it's students teaching students in many respects, which is super exciting too, with the support of Mr. Haig. The fact that you're doing these projects in such a way that would support a future career as well. You're getting that real hands-on experience and supporting school at the same time. It's just a lovely program, and I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. My question is, if either of you have looked into programs here locally for that 13th year, whether it's college, VOTEC, or something else, and how that, if there are programs here locally that would be, or do you need to go to LA to do kind of the experiences that you both saw at those colleges? Maybe it's for Mr. Haig too, but that's kind of what I'm wondering about.
Well, you definitely don't have to go to LA. Personally, I've always wanted to go to school out of state. I'm looking at University of Utah at Montana State University, which is where a bunch of our alumni have gone, is Montana State. So definitely not LA, there's schools all over the country. I don't know of any in Washington. Yeah, I don't know any in Washington personally, but I'm sure there is some at some of the colleges. But yeah, I've been looking out of state myself.
yeah, I mean, for most of the major film programs, notable film schools, they're usually centered around, because of the nature of the industry being so concentrated in specific locations, it's mostly concentrated around the film scenes in LA and New York primarily. There are obviously film schools probably all over the country. I haven't really looked for film stuff in Washington, just because there are a lot of options outside, but yeah. Part of it's at the University of Washington, they don't have a film program, they have a film studies program. And then there's at Washington State, they have a broadcast production program, which it's very different than traditional film, but
Yeah, and Pete, what I would add is there are some community colleges. Bates Technical College has a broadcast type program. Shoreline used to have a film program. I don't know if it's still in existence after COVID. I haven't connected back there. But WSU has the largest program in Washington State, and they are broadcast based. So if you want to go into the broadcast side of it, that's a pathway. Aside from that, Central has a small film program, and Eastern has a small film program. Both of those are viable. It's really all dependent upon what you want to do in industry. If you want to be in the Hollywood industry, then you've got to go to one of those big cities and one of those big schools. If you want to make documentaries, you certainly don't have to do that. You could go to a Eastern, you could go to a Central, you could go to a Montana State, and you can even go to a Montana State, Utah, and still make it in the Hollywood industry. A lot of those schools are pulling Hollywood retirees into their programs, and so you have great instructors. It's just you don't have that direct connection right there. But it's a lot cheaper.
Which is always good. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. This has been a fantastic way to kick off our meeting. We really appreciate you both being here and sharing your experience and your talents with us. And thank you, Mr. Hagen, for your support of these wonderful students in this program. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Great job. Great job. Thank you. And the demonstrations will continue as we move here out. We're going to move on to agenda item 5.02, the Tahoma High School Anatomage presentation. You might Anatomage. It's pretty close. Pretty close. Okay. And Kelly Jarvis is here with some guests as well.
Yes,
Hi.
so I'm Kelly Jarvis. I'm one of 3 Project Lead the Way instructors at the high school. And so I brought with me 4 of our medical intervention students who are going to introduce you to the Anatomage table. So I want to thank the board for approving the purchase of this. This is an amazing piece of equipment. We're very fortunate, not med schools are using these now. So a lot of med schools are now getting rid of live cadavers and are actually using the Anatomage table instead of live cadaver. So our students are getting access to something that is so high tech that even some colleges don't have these. So this is something huge for them. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and take it away. So go ahead and move up and move my kids. Yeah, flip. Just, yes, if you want to be able to see it.
Okay, hi, my name's Dylan.
Talk really loud.
Okay, my name's Dylan. And I'm Yvonne. And currently we are using the Anatomage table for our Project Lead the Way courses. It's helpful for students like us with identifying body parts, grounding our knowledge on organ systems, finding where things are located, and so much more. The Anatomage table provides us with 4 different cadavers, 2 females and 2 males with their pairs of the female male is white and another pair is Asian. And so with this button over here, you can break down the levels of the body from skin, tissue, muscles, organ, and skeletal. This is highly beneficial for our students enrolled in sports med classes. And then with this other button, you can increase or decrease the visibility of the nerves. And then to rotate the cadaver, you can take one finger and drag. This will take you from supine to prone position. And then if you want to zoom in or zoom out, you can take 2 fingers. And tapping on things such as the name, for example, it'll highlight both the body part and the name. This is a great way for students who are using it on their own to test themselves with quick and accurate results. And if you want to change the perspective of the cadaver, right here you can do either sagittal or transverse point of view. And then finally, with this button with the eye on it over here, you can deselect or select various body systems or body parts you're choosing. This can help you hone in on what you're really trying to focus without the extra unnecessary anatomical parts. And then you can take away different parts. You take away the skeletal system, and then you just have like your basic organs and nerves go back and forth. So.
Right, that's the first. There's so many things this table can do, so we're just going to show you 3 of the main things that we've been using. Can you reach?
Okay, so this is introduce yourself first. My name is Ava. I'm in I'm taking the PLTW classes, and then we've been learning about this. So this is the fly-through, and so this is really cool because you can go to a specific organ. There's intestines, then the esophagus, and this is the heart right now. And so you can play with this down here, and it shows you a fly through. So as if there's a camera inside the organ flying through, so you can see all the different parts. You can see the inside, and then up here it shows you where it is in the organ, and then the name. So for example, this right now is the left atrium, ventricles, and so you can also pause this up here and zoom and kind of change so you can see where it is in the organ. So we have the heart, and then this is another one that we also have. And so right now it's traveling through the mouth, the esophagus, the nose, so you can kind of see where the system is and you can breathe through it. And everything we just minimize down, and then you can easily open it up with another tab, just like a computer. So next we have kinesiology. So kinesiology is basically your joints, your muscles, cartilage, everything, how it works together to make the joints move. So on this specific table, we have the knee, the hip, your pelvis, and your spine. And then you have your shoulder blade and your shoulder. And you can go into depth with each one on how each one can move in specific ways and what plays into each role. So we're going to do the knee because that's pretty cool. And then you can basically move or pick what flexion you want, whether it's forward to the side. You do this one. There we go. And so we can rotate this and move it over. And then we just play. We can see every muscle that's being engaged and everything that's being used to make the specific motion. And then we just stop this one. And we go back here. We can do the shoulder, which is the most complex joint in the body. And this one is moving your arm straight forward. And as I rotate it, you can see everything down the side being extended and brought back. This one goes backwards. There is so many things in this computer that we've been able to learn. So many things you have, there's not a limit to anything you can learn on this thing. And these are just kind of the coolest ones and the ones that you just understand.
So beyond just the couple of things that they demonstrated today, there's a full library of MRA, CTs, X-rays that show different anomalies or broken bones or different types of disease things. And then as well as that, they've got a whole veterinarian slide, so there's animals. X-rays there that you can see. There's also gestational, so there's fetuses. There's a baby in one of them. So you can go through and see the gestational stages or what it would look like and dissect through a uterus and see everything in there. There's a dissection tool in there. So there's tons of stuff. So we're just trying to get it into the classroom. COVID really kind of screwed us up with training. So SportsMed's been using it and Project Bingo have been using it in the classrooms. So that's it.
Stay there, though, because they're going to have questions for you. There's a question.
I have a question. And this may be a question for Mr. Barber all the way in the back, because I am again so floored that we have this amazing technology available for our high school students. So my wondering is, how do we stay current on the best equipment, the best opportunity that's available to for each of these programs?
Happy to answer it. And how would we stay current? The two people that are in front of me, they're at the cutting edge, and they come to me all the time. Mari, can we buy this? Can I get this? Can I get this? So any way I can to get that kind of stuff into the hands of the teachers, by all means, it's the teachers that are driving the industry standard. They're connecting with industry to find out what industry is needing and wanting, and then they make it happen. It's all.
Well, thank you for being amazing and finding this and making it happen.
At the same time, I would like to say too that I know a lot of CTE people in lots of districts, and they ask me the same thing. And I've been doing this now for 28 years, and our district has been amazing over that time span with our vocational directors and our finance department in capturing and maintaining our CTE enhanced dollars for our students. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths that I've seen over in our district over the years. And it allows us to be able to purchase these things that the kids will see in their post-high school plans and in industry, so.
These students that take the Project Lead the Way classes, they're using equipment that most kids won't touch until they get into college, and sometimes not even in college. We've got our own PCR machine, a thermocycler. We can increase numbers of DNA. They're using micropipettes. We've got gel electrophoresis. They're doing bacterial transformation. They're doing things that most kids would never see until college.
That's amazing. And then that leads me to my question for you all. What are you planning on doing after you graduate from high school? Do you have something in mind, a plan in mind?
I think we all kind of are interested in the medical field. Even just this, being in these classes, being in these courses, has opened this whole new window of things that you can learn and how interesting and how in-depth it can be. And this thing, not to just bring back to but it is so captivating in how every little thing worked, and I think that's really interesting to me, and I really want to go into medicine and internal medicine, and this thing is really kind of gravitated me towards it more.
Yeah, I'm sure that for most when I go into the medical field, me personally, I think that I want to be a pediatrician, so all my classes have been geared towards that. And I would say in the past few weeks of just learning how to present this board on its own, I've learned so much from it just from doing basic run-throughs of it and everything that these boards taught me. And I think it's super helpful because in my other medical classes, we have papers or pictures from online, and I've noticed that every one is slightly different. So it's kind of part of when you're comparing it, when you have a picture from online that you're using, but then the picture on the test is different. Here it's relatable, you can compare it to the other cadavers, and it's a true real life experience. So I appreciate that we have this.
Yeah. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Do you, so looking at all this equipment is just mind blowing. And I think about myself with just the basic remote control at home. And what I'm thinking about is kind of the maintenance and the troubleshooting with equipment like this. Is it costly to have this kind of equipment? And how do we kind of attack that?
Would you like me to address that? Yeah. That's my responsibility is to make sure that it's maintained appropriately, and that's everything from the safety, I think, of our auto shop with our lifts, and we have inspections done annually. Rick and I were engaged in a conversation 2 weeks ago on insurance for some of this equipment. At what point should we insure it, should we not insure it? So all of these are decisions and discussions we have constantly. And depending on the piece of equipment will depend on what that answer is.
I'm curious, we have our district nurse in the room this evening, Jennifer Lyons. What do you think of this?
I am amazed because this was invented around 2005 or 2006. They don't have this in medical schools, like respiratory schools. You'll see this in physical therapy schools, but you will not see this at the nursing school. The University of Texas Medical Center would be able to afford that, but the community colleges that pump out LPNs would not be able to afford this what does one cost, about 120,
This one, I
130,000?
think, was about 80,000, 70, 80,000.
Okay, so they come down in cost. I've seen them, but never touched one. And the difference between learning this way and learning how I learned is remarkable, because you can't, if you're going into the medical field, I worked on cadavers, and the quality of the cadaver you get depends on, how much the school can afford. It's that first experience with the cadaver is off-putting, whereas this, you get used to the idea of exploring the anatomy of a human body, and it's so different from a book. For me, having to have read, studying in the 90s for my NCLEX exam, memorizing muscle, tendon, insertion points, flexion, supination, pronation, you can see it all right there. Y'all are so lucky. That is so awesome. I'm kind of drooling over the equipment that's
I have a few remarks before I do. Any student board reps, any comments, questions?
I actually just had a question. So when you guys use this in your classes and whatnot, how do you kind of I guess like take turns or like, cause since there's only one, and I know it's like obviously we can't have like more than one, it's already so expensive. But like, do you guys like use it, maybe like the teacher like show stuff in class sometimes, or do you guys like on your own like maybe come in after school and stuff to work on it too, just because like obviously not everyone in the class can use that, and so how does that go?
I think it's just kind of the people who are interested in it and who want to like figure it out kind of come up and do it. I think there was 1 or 2 sportsman classes that I've heard that had like presented when learning the muscle groups and the skeletal that they just kind of just showed it, but I don't.
It depends on, so students have been coming in during power hour. I've got a couple of sports med kids that are doing the state tournament on the Anatomage, and so they've been coming in before school to work on it. Standing it upright like this is why we bought the one that was able to go up and down. So standing upright, you can use it in front of the class to demonstrate the whole thing, and then going down, you can have 6 to 8 students around it manipulating it at the same time. So you can do small group work.
Well, I just kind of stepping back a little bit, zooming out at our CTE programs. I just love the fact that we've got so many hands-on experiences that we offer as a system. We've seen your production tonight. You know, the obviously the variety of shops that we have at the school, even at our academy, we're getting out there in the world. And this would be a really messy way to get hands-on experience, where it to be a different type of technology. So this is just remarkable, and I'm really thankful that you all came here to provide this demonstration for us. Yeah, my question was similar to others, just wondering how often this thing comes out in class. Is it a daily thing that you do every single period? Is it a here and there kind of thing? Or?
So I can address that. So not yet. That's going to be our goal because it is not a user-friendly piece of equipment. It requires training.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to get myself completely trained on it. Kayla has actually been doing a great job learning to find all the different things, and then we're going to trickle it out from there. So it's just trying to get that time to train other teachers to use it. That's the problem at this point.
Also, I'd like to add, just like I think personally, you can see that every teacher, like that they teach a subject, they are all very like, this is the way that, not all teachers, but that this is the way they've done it. This is the same curriculum. It's always worked. And kind of introducing something like this, and then again bringing that training is not super easy. And then, like we said, like during COVID, kind of put that big stop in it, and then all these other things, and then change all things. But so I think, yeah, like now we're starting to learn more about it. Students are learning a lot more about it, and I think it's going to start happening more.
Pete, and that's one thing I would say with all of this equipment and all of the CTEs is that as you purchase new equipment, you have to have that time for training, and it takes a lot of time to figure out how to integrate it into the classroom. And one thing that I really like, especially as we moved into second semester with our PE on our Fridays within our CTE department, is we get some time to really work on figuring some of those things out, time that we haven't had in the past. And I can speak for myself that that's very valuable as we're trying to figure out not only how does the equipment itself work, because you have to have time in front of it as a teacher pushing those buttons and figuring out, but then time figuring out how do I integrate it into the curriculum and expose it to students. So, you know, that Friday PE time really allows for a lot of that work to happen.
Great. Well, thanks once again. Great presentation. I appreciate you being here, and appreciate that. Good job. And I also know that it's a school night. Y'all got things to do tomorrow morning, so you won't be offended if you need to slip out. That's going to take us to agenda item 5.03, which is an action item to approve the CTE 4-year program requirement. And please have a motion to approve agenda item 5.03, the 4-year CTE program requirement.
I move to approve the CTE 4-year planning requirement.
A second. Right, motion, Carrie on second. And we have Tahoma High School CTE Director Marty Barber here with us to keep the CTE love moving along.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, every year I get the great opportunity to present CTE, and every year I go over my time. Every single year. And I drive home going, I can't believe I did it again. So this year, instead of me, I just asked students to do it. You know, we're going to take all the time they want. But I seriously have the best job in the district. To be able to work with what Rick and what Kelly and their kids do, and that's just 2 out of the many programs we have. So I'm really, really fortunate to do what we do. When we look at this 4-year plan, well, many of the things in this 4-year plan are things that we do and we take very seriously. Some of it is, quite frankly, compliance to the state. And so one of my goals as I write these 4-year plans is to work again with Don Wakely. If you look at criteria 10, there's something that Don and I have been working on for a number of years that I hold very closely. But some of this, quite frankly, is state compliance. The state tells us what these 16 criteria are that we fill them on. And one of my goals is to make sure that I don't bog down our teachers with some of this compliance stuff so that they can focus on the really important of getting to know the tables, getting to know the cameras, figuring out how to put it in the curriculum. So some of the, like I say, some of these things you're going to see as, well, it seems kind of compliance or red tape. It is. But some of the stuff that is in here is really exactly what we hold close to us. And like I say, criteria 10 is where we're looking at pathways. And how do we make sure our pathways meet our kids' needs? And so that's kind of it. One of the other things that's part and parcel of this 4-year plan, and it does tie in with funding, is in the past, and you've all seen this as part of the Perkins and part of the 4-year plan, is our funding cycle is a 5-year cycle, and we would replace labs, we would replace things like that. One of the things that we no longer have to replace are the carts, because we don't use carts. We used to have carts that we would wheel into different classrooms. And once we went to a 1-to-1, we don't need to replace those carts every 5 years. So what we've done is we've taken that 5th year, and instead of carts, we're looking at things like how do we buy more equipment for our labs. So that's one of the changes that you will see as you approve that new Perkins expenditure report. Any questions, thoughts? Can I brag more on CT? I have my own 20 minutes.
I'm expecting at least 15 more. So
Excellent. Excellent. And you know I can fill that time. I can fill that time.
So I think one of the things, the kids are here, and obviously a lot of gratitude to the kids, and the shiny objects are here, and that's nice, it's good. The complexities that have gone into creating programs like this, where we can get a kid to LA to be looking at that film school going, this could be a reality. The opportunities that have led to that event, there's so much complexity that's gone into it. And I'm looking at Dawn in the back, and I'm thinking about 2014 or 15, whenever it was, and the conversations about the 8-period day. And you don't get a 4th year of video production without opportunities like that. And there's these little things that are incredibly important. I think about the school board's support of things like the Anatomage table. And I remember you coming here 3 years ago talking about it, and it did not sound nearly as cool as what those kids just did. And then, you talk about the Perkins grant that's sitting here, and Laura Boland, whose name doesn't get brought up. And you think about, Marty, your support in removing barriers for the teachers, which is a big piece, but it's just not a piece that we get to hear about. And eventually you get down to the end of it, and you talk about people like Rick and Kelly. And sure, Rick has shiny objects, but that didn't make him a mentor for Brad. Rick gets that shiny thing, and kids get to play with those toys, but it's Rick and his relationship with the kids and the driving passion that put that kid standing there in LA. So thank you to you, Rick, Kelly, who's not here anymore, but to you, Marty, and Laura, and Dawn, and all the people who are behind the scenes, including the board, for making things like this happen. So thanks, Marty.
You're welcome. Oh, anything else? Questions? Other questions? Hey, I still have 13 minutes, so.
Well, I'm very excited about CTE, as you know. If you had a magic wand and you could say, with that wand, exactly what you want for CTE, if there was something more that you want, what would it be?
Great question. Too many things to list. I look at where we have gaps, and Dawn and I were talking about the last 2 days, but I see how do we get our apprenticeship up and running. I met with some folks, our 2 future aid specialists, and I met with some folks in the apprenticeship program. And most people that start an apprenticeship don't start it until they're 28 years old. So what happens between 18 and 28 years, 10 years that somehow they don't start their apprenticeship? And so how do we get our students ready to start those apprenticeships, or at least start to know? I always talk about doors that kids have in their senior year. And they see a bunch of doors, but they don't know which door to open or how to open those doors. And so how do we get our kids to say, oh, behind this door is the apprenticeship, and here's how you open that door, and here's how you cross that threshold. So I would say apprenticeship is one of the areas that I'd love to see us build and partner with. You know, it's not just different unions, but it's even in education. Education has an apprenticeship program, student teaching. And so how do we get kids kind of through those doors? Yeah. Like I said, I'll stand here all night and tell you what I can dream of, but I would say apprenticeships right now is probably one.
And thank you.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's the best job in the world. It's easy. I've got great teachers, I've got great kids, I've got great parents, I've got great board. It's a great job. So easy for me. Please.
That question made me think about another question, which is what partnerships do we currently have with industry companies or industry experts? And then what would you ideally like those partnerships to look like?
Great question. So every single program has an advisory, and that advisory is made up of industry folks. And I'll use Rick, for example. Rick, how many people on your advisory?
I think 8 on my advisory, and 6 of them are past students who are professionals in the industry, based out of Australia, based out of Austin, Texas, based out of Hollywood, based out of LA, so they're kind of all over. And they usually Zoom in and participate, and then I have a local 3 or 4 as well.
So that really just kind of scratches that surface. That's the advisory side. What I'd like to do is push that a little further and get into a real partnership with those folks. I won't kid you, COVID really put us back on that. I get it when people weren't in buildings, but one of the long-range plans I've had since we've started is how do we break down the walls between the schoolhouse, and when I say industry, I'm not talking just industry that has smokestacks coming out of it and they're making steel. That's not the industry. I'm talking the healthcare industry, the film industry, things like that. How do we break down those walls? How do we get our kids out of the classroom and into industry? And again, we can use Rick, but I can use any number of. But Rick takes his kids to Hollywood. The first time I went, or before I went, I thought, well, this is cool. They go down, tour Universal Studios like everybody else, and they kind of watch the movies, and that's cool, but who cares? I went with Rick, and we got, when I say Rick got the kids behind the doors of the industry. They weren't just sort of on the outskirts. The kids were talking to the actual experts in industry. And so how do we create more of those opportunities? And we are. I've got Claire Nance with HOSA, and she's getting our kids out into hospitals, into things like that. So that's, you know me, that's not enough. How do we keep pushing? And so that's my job, is to figure out different ways to open those doors for kids.
Marty, I'll echo comments made by others. Just really appreciate, I want to zero in on something that you said when you were starting with your remarks, that just the role that you play in supporting all of these teachers and what you do to eliminate the red tape that could land on their desk just means a ton. It means that they get to focus that much more time and pour it into the students and pour it into learning these new pieces of equipment and things that they can put in their students' hands and give them that really rich experience. That means a lot, and it's kind of behind the scenes. It goes unnoticed, but we appreciate it very much that these teachers get to really dive in and do what they're passionate about. So it means a lot. One question, it's relative to the other attachment that was provided. There's kind of a 10-year expenditure, plan or whatever. And I'm just wondering how much of that is by way of this grant is set in stone, and how much flexibility we have if an opportunity came up or something blindsided us and we needed to pivot. Do you have some flexibility in being able to do that?
Yes, the Perkins grant is that expenditure report. I have to follow that. Now, although it is a 10-year, it's a 5-year repeating grant, so a repeating cycle. So if something were to come up that we said, hey, we need to spend some of the Perkins money on something, I would simply come in front of the board and say, hey, let's adjust that expenditure, and we could do it. I have a very healthy budget, and that budget is healthy because of the number of kids that are in CT. That's really what we're driving at. And as Mike alluded to with Dawn and the 8-period day, the 8-period day allows kids to take a lot of CT classes. In other districts, they're at a 7-period day or a 6-period day. When we went to the 8-period day, one of the things we discovered is kids weren't signing up for an extra math class. Kids weren't signing up for an extra science class. They were signing up for extra CT classes, and because they signed up, that's where your money comes from, in simplest terms. And Lori can speak much more eloquently to that funding model than I ever could. So because of the healthy budget, I've typically not needed to change the Perkins expenditures. I've been in things like this, I've been able to find through different means. So that's great.
Student workers, yeah.
Mine is more of a comment, but at least for my experience, when I took a sports med class, and that kind of sparked my interest in like the medical field. So I'm actually one of those students who goes in early in the morning and uses the Anatomage table. I had to write an essay today for a scholarship that asked me when was the first time that I was interested in a STEM career or medical field. And that was that sports med class that I took. And it was even during COVID, and it was like one thing that really interested me. And it was like, I like learning, but like taking that class was like definitely a life changer for me. So.
Yeah, and like I said, I can sit here with program after program, but sports med is another phenomenal program that we have. Just amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I appreciate Marty bringing up the pathways and the weight of the golden wand. And I'll be excited because the golden wand is being waved by Marty and Dawn in their work on pathways all through this spring. And so the board will get to hear some updates on around our pathway options as it relates to Tahoma 100. So appreciate you guys picking that up.
Wonderful. Well done you. You made it under the wire. Thank you so much, Marty. Yeah, with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That motion passes 4-0. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Marty.
See you.
As well.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Rick.
Rick.
That brings us to agenda item 5.04, which is the Public Relations Cares update, and the Director of Public Relations, AJ Garcia, is coming up to the podium to present and answer some questions for us. Good evening, Mr. Garcia.
So lame that I have to follow CT. We're gonna have words.
But you're going to do a great story about it next time.
Yeah, for sure. That's right, for sure. What a great segue.
I'm trying.
So, some of my favorite words. Yes. So the theme of what I'm going to talk to you guys tonight really centers around accessibility. And when we think about our modern technology world that we live in, I think that most communicators and communications teams really have two big challenges that they have to think about. One is the challenge of being able to have your message heard by your audience through this big sea of information, but then two is also being able to hear back from your audience and being able to take that input and that feedback and be able to create that two-way dialogue. So when I think about our public relations department, our core responsibility, really our reason for existing, is to be able to overcome those challenges. And our department and our district has a really long list of different diverse stakeholder groups. And so we've got a lot of people that want to be communicated to in different ways, and that's really our job, is to make sure that we're finding people, accessing them, making sure that our information for them is accessible and digestible, and then at the same time that we're listening to their feedback and their input. We're having that genuine partnership with them. I won't read through this whole page, but I'll point up to this last belief, our belief section, that I feel really strongly about, and that is, it is our responsibility to meet our audiences where they are. And that speaks to that too. So you've got all these different tools that we use, and sometimes you'll talk to someone who says, well, I haven't heard about Tahoma 100. And It's like, well, I sent you 14 emails on it, but maybe they don't read their emails, or they get 1 million emails a day. And that's a challenge, is to try and work through those things. So what are the other tools that we can use to reach people? How can we make sure that our communication is concise and engaging? And those are things that we're always thinking about. So I mentioned accessibility, and when I look up here at our Wheel of Fortune and the things that we're doing to connect our department to our district goals, these are all connection points that I feel really speak to accessibilities. These are areas where we're either making an effort to make our message more accessible or make our people more accessible so that people can create that dialogue with them. I won't speak to a lot of these just yet, but I will point here, and there's a lot of green and yellow scattered in here, but I really want to point to these 3 areas of orange that we've been thinking a lot about, and I'll zoom in on each one of these. So the first one that was up there was communication accessibility for English learning and non-English speaking families. It's in orange. We did take a really positive step, I think, this past year, which was expanding our school messenger, which is really our key district communication tool, and we're able to expand that to 30 languages. Last school year, we had over 67 spoken languages reported within our system, and as you all know, our ELL population is just skyrocketing in our community. So still, even just being able to communicate in all the languages that our families speak, there's still an area of growth there. But in addition to just being able to use that one communication tool to be able to send emails and text messages in different languages, there's also so many different pieces of documents that we share. And throughout our school system, there's all of these different things that parents need to sign, need to read through. And so the next steps for us would be to be able to start working on some of those higher leverage documents and web pages, and being able to also make those more accessible in different languages too. I just wanted to use the free and reduced meals application as an easy example. This is a really, really complex document to begin with. So just imagine seeing this in a language that you're not really all that familiar with. You've got text that's running sideways, you've got a million different boxes. In the middle, you can't really see it, but you have to check either bi-weekly or twice a month. So then you have to not only figure out what the language is asking in there, but then be able to delineate between those things. It's a challenge. Just for funsies, here it is in Polish. I don't speak Polish, I don't know if anyone here does, but I mean, imagine being handed this document and having to navigate your way through that to be able to do something as important as get your student enrolled in free and reduced meals. It's a challenge. These are federal documents, so they're really outside of our influence. But what we can do is do things like improve our communication platforms to be able to make those things easier to access. So we recently just made some significant upgrades to our free reduced web page. Things like adding some step-by-step instructions that can walk people through it. Things like making sure that instead of having PDFs on our pages, we're using hyperlinks so that if someone is translating a web page, the text will also be translated into that language that they want to read it in. Making sure that we're adding links to the other translated applications that are on the USDA page. So thinking about it through that equity lens and trying to put ourselves in the shoes of someone that already would really struggle to get through this document, maybe not being able to access it because of the language barriers, and making sure that we're just trying to make it as easy as we can for them. Other things that we're doing in this area, you can see that drop down there on our website. That does allow translations into about 15 different languages, and most of our most popular languages are on there too. I did want to point to the bottom left. That's not really a language assistance tool, but we did get a plugin added to our website this year, which is an accessibility reader tool. So you'll see this on a lot of websites. Oftentimes you sort of just scroll by it, but if you were to click on that, you can change the background colors and font sizes and font types. And so if people have visual impairments or need other supports in that way, they're able to access our website more easily. One of the other things that's a key area improvement for us is supporting school level communicators to be able to provide consistent messaging to stakeholders. I've talked to you guys about our communication audit that was done about a year and a half ago a number of times, and one of the key recommendations in there that I think is really the biggest task is standardizing communications across our entire system. This is a meme that I pulled that says I had to quit my job so I could read emails from my kids' school full time, which I think is funny. I also pulled this from my mom's Facebook. And I don't think she understands what I do for a living. It's especially funny for me. But we get it. Like we as a school system, and it's not just us. This wasn't a Tahoma parent. It's not just us. Schools across the country, that's a challenge that you have to fight through, right? Because we have all these different tools that we're using to communicate with our families. And as a number of you know, if you've had kids at multiple schools who are engaged in different programs, the types of communication and the different tools that you need to have to be able to access all of that can be really overwhelming. And so what we are really thinking hard about is how are we able to take some of these things and find tools that are going to allow us to integrate those and really put them in one place. There's one example of a tool that I can give that really allows direct staff to family, staff to student communication. It's two-way, it automatically translates. You can take your daily messages and it generates a feed so that people can go look at just those things that are relevant to their student every day. So there's tools that are out there, but it really is a multi-year approach to be able to do those things and do them really well. And time becomes the biggest asset there that we struggle to find in that. The first thing is really auditing what are all of the tools that we're using across our system. If you think about teachers, coaches, academic club advisors, there's just so many people that are communicating with our different stakeholder groups and all the tools that they're using. So that's one step. Two would be obviously finding the right tool that works for our system. But then the third step would be figuring out how we're going to train our communicators on that too. Because if you don't do it effectively, what you're going to end up with is just one extra tool that some people are using while everyone else is continuing to use the things that they're familiar with. So it's a big task to figure out what that looks like for a system, but it is one of the things that we're thinking pretty deeply about. The third one I'll point to is improving accessibility to key website information. This is another one where, if you look at our website, you've all been on there, right? There's drop downs for a lot of different things, and just the number of sub-pages that are available can be pretty overwhelming. I think about an analogy kind of like if you go to a restaurant, sure there are things on a menu, but you're really there for one thing, and that's food, and you know that. And when you come to school, obviously you want your student to learn, but the number of products or number of things that you need to be familiar with is so much more expansive than just sending a kid to a classroom. You have to know about how to access nurses, counselors, making online payments, the calendar, when does the bus come, what's the lunch menu, athletics, activities, technology, and where you're supposed to get your Chromebook at the start of the year. There's just all these different things that you really need to know. And when you think about putting all of those things on a website, this is just one of our drop downs, it's all there, but it can be kind of difficult to find sometimes. And so kind of going back to making sure that we're accessing people and meeting them where they are, we need to be really thoughtful about how we can condense these things, how we can make these our tool more user-friendly. And I think a byproduct of that would be that people can go onto our website, easily find information, and then really what it does is saves time from other people or people on our staff having to go digging for it, helping them find answers. So if we can make this a more usable tool for our families, and not one, only increases the partnerships that we have with them, and two, it saves us a lot of time on the back end as well. So those were kind of the three things that I had identified that, man, we've really got some work to do in those areas, but wanted you to know that we're thinking pretty deeply about them. You will see under our high expectations tab that there's some green stacked up, so I won't talk just about things that we feel like we need to improve at. But when we think about high expectations and what's our through line, what we do is a lot different from what a teacher or a principal or the classified staff who are working with their kids every day do. And what we have the fortune of doing is being able to tell the stories of the positive things that are happening. So we're very lucky in our department, and you see the things like the Anatomage, the amazing equipment, and the amazing students and the staff that come in. This is really about storytelling, and that makes that part of our job really, really easy, is that Tahoma lends itself to being able to tell really great stories. I am really proud of the way that our department tells our stories. I think if you go to any newsletter, social media feed, whatever, any other school district around us, you're not going to find anyone that looks anything like ours, and I'm really proud of that. But it comes back to having really great stories to tell, and we're very fortunate to have that too. So that's where you see a little green stacked up, as we're fortunate to be able to tell the stories of our district as well. I'm going to open it up to questions, but while I open it up to questions, for anyone who's here who maybe wants to scan that QR code and attend the Tahoma 100 Cafe on Thursday, we'd love to have you. Everyone's invited. But I'm happy to answer questions.
Nice job for you. Thanks for bringing QR codes to the board. I appreciate that. Questions for Mr. Garcia?
I just think you're great.
I think
It's really appreciate you and everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Please.
There would not be a PR discussion if I didn't get to tell you how amazing you are. So I just want you to know you are doing a phenomenal job. And I know one of the things that you mentioned that you really saw as a celebration was the storytelling. So do you mind sharing other things that you would celebrate as a department as well? In addition to storytelling, like give us 2 more things that you think you're doing a really great job about.
One of the things that I think you've taken a really good step in doing is, at least from a district level, being able to start to pare down those levels of communication. We've got our weekly bulletins that we send out. Tahoma Matters, our e-newsletter. That, I'm going to use that as my second one, but it's in the same vein. But the way that we've taken that and just reduced the amount of text that goes into those things, we know that we're up against a world where we're fighting for attention all the time. And so to be able to make things short and sweet and have people just check in and check out and be able to get the information that they need, I think we do well. I do think our social media and our newsletter are reflective of that as well too. We've really made an effort to try and take videos that could have once been 4 or 5 minutes long and make them a 60-second video. Maybe they don't need narration, and if you can watch that and walk away still knowing, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on in We the People, and be able to feel proud of those students and be able to celebrate them and not take up too much of our already limited time and be able to quickly tell those stories, I think is something we're always working to do a better job at. I've done well at this point.
10 out of 10. It's so great. No, I'm really grateful because I see as a parent so much more personality around our district now. I feel like we are celebrating the things that we have to celebrate about. And I think before they were often hidden, not intentionally, but I just think you all have done such a brilliant job of bringing out those stories and creating personality and really building that Tahoma family that we all believe in. So thank you, I'm grateful.
Thanks, AJ. Awesome.
Thank you. AJ, I likewise appreciate that, and I'm glad that you pointed out some things that are focal points for you that you worked on, and I'm also glad that you celebrated some of the things that were well. I really appreciate that. The question that I have is, I'm going to zoom in on a comment you made about halfway through relative to the communication audit that was done, and that being kind of a piece of support and it's informed your work somehow. I'm just wondering if there's other examples or just how informative that piece of work was for your department and your work going forward.
It's huge. I think, and I've shared previously too. Like when we first got that report, I think I had been here for about 6 weeks, and so really for me to kind of hear from people from those first 6 weeks of, oh, we should be thinking about doing this better. This is something to do really well. To have a professional come in and actually get that direct input from our stakeholders to get a really in-depth look at how are we actually doing. That was super huge early on, and then the goals that were identified in there too, we hold those pretty near and dear to our heart. I don't know if I could do it on the spot, but if I took about 30 seconds, I could probably think 1 through 8 on what those goals are and what the specific action steps are within there too, so we take it pretty seriously.
That's great. And I know that we've even since then done the security audit we did. The IT department was in here talking about a similar situation. We got a couple more coming, so just really appreciate that our willingness to look outside and get into it and use that.
Yeah.
I saw Olivia's hand go up.
More of a comment. Just I really appreciate that you're looking into the accessibility accessibility of the website information because just this past week, my friend was doing a project that where she wanted to look into some of our like policies and procedures, and she had a really hard time finding those, and like I helped her because I know about orthodox and everything, and so I really appreciate that there's working to make that more accessible.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, that wraps us up. Thank you, AJ. Appreciate it. That brings us to agenda item 5.05, which is the mid-year review of Tahoma Care's district goals and targets. And Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Don Wakely, is coming forward and present to us and answer some questions.
Do you want the QR code, Don?
I got it. Nice job, Mr. Garcia. Beautiful. You have seen some really great examples tonight of exactly what you asked us to try to work hard on 2.5 years ago. And that makes me super happy, sitting in the back room. Just some really, really, really nice examples of things starting to come together. AJ, do you have the link to the slide deck that they worked out?
I don't, actually, but I can get it shortly.
Thank you, that would be awesome. As you think about, and in just a second, AJ will make magic happen. And as you imagine that through line in thinking about the board goals and targets, and we noticed that our student board rep referenced our CARES goals multiple times as she was giving her report. We thought you noticed that AJ, as he was giving the department plan, was connecting all over the place to that. Marty's presentation and his connections that he had in CTE work, but also the reflection of the work that from our students as we think about our site plan and our high school. All just amazing examples of all of those things kind of coming together. They really asked us to zero in and focus on. As we think about the next steps, and one of the things that I included in the overview for you was the request that we begin to become even more measured in what are our targets, measurable targets that we're looking for, and then what are the potential benchmarks, how will we know how we're making progress. And while the dashboard that AJ used in his example was great because it gives you a feel for those key actions and a feel for where they're actually at in that work, we know that you were also asking us to begin to quantify that a little bit more with some more measurable targets. And so that's definitely work that we're in process on. So we have some mock-ups that I included. If you actually go forward a number there, AJ. Go ahead. Our goals, our targets, all amazing. Oh, just because we were right there, a little status moment. Just so things are pretty, and you can see where we're at. Keep going. One more, there we go. So what you see here are just some very, very, very beginning draft mock-ups in taking what is on some of the site plans in this space, data elements on their dashboards, and beginning to look at them through a multi-year approach. One of the things that will be highlighted in the cafe on Thursday is as we think about our elementary students, and it isn't that these high school amazing students, all of a sudden high school hits and they're magically future ready. That's not the way that it works. When we think about the investments that our school system is making in preschool, in Ready for K, in Transition K, in Kinder Camp, in all of those pieces as we try to help students be ready for the next step, that's the key. And it happens as one level builds on another. And really thinking about that, if we take that translation and we put it over into our site plans, this is a really good picture as you think about kindergarteners, not kindergarteners at a point in time, but as we look at our kindergarteners and we think about what's happening for them, this year is kindergarteners, but next year is first graders, the following year is second graders, and we start to look at that picture of students. It starts to bring the every period home, because it's not looking at generic student groups, it's looking at individuals within our school system and how are we doing in getting them prepared for their next steps at every step of the way. And that's really the direction that we're going to. And with that, I'm going to pause, because at the heart, if you go ahead and click forward to one, we see that same thing with middle level, and then a mock-up for high school, and then one more AJ. As we think about kind of that journey, and we think about where we're at, and I could have added more, could have put the cafe on there, right? Could have put the Tahoma 100. We're really trying, and it's really credit to Mike, in trying to make sure that all the pieces are coming together in this cohesive whole. And so we're really trying to live that in our leadership. Questions?
Just thank you, Dawn. It's so clear and well laid out, and I just appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess when I look at those individualized targets and benchmarks, I mean, my one concern that I have is how do we make sure that we're not pigeonholing our students again to an expectation of what they've done in the past for what we expect in the future in terms of pocket performance, you know, and they say, oh, well, they're below this year, I'm not going to expect them to be below next year, or should we work harder? I mean, I see where they'll help us work harder in that position, but also I don't want to degrade their expectations either by, you know, that's a good thing for a student, right, is new school year, fresh start, maybe I can do better than I did last year. And are we pigeonholing them already and by doing these kind of assessments?
Yeah. One of the things I think that we found, certainly want to be super conscious of that, Matt. I also think that there's a place where we want to think about fresh start very much from a behavior perspective. Like we can all completely, I want a fresh start because sometimes I screw up, right? And we all want to have that piece. We also know that learning is a little bit different from that. And we want to not think about fresh start, but we want to think about fast start. And we want to think about what do we know about students. They do not come to us as blank slates. They come to us with knowledge, skills, and abilities. And if we really understand where their skill levels are at, then we are really able to accelerate that pace with them to take them to the next step. So it really is that place where we want teachers to talk to their colleagues from the grade level below as they understand where their students are at. Otherwise, we waste a lot of time as educators in trying to kind of relearn where kids are at. And so we don't want that to happen, because we lose time with our kids. That's why if teachers, sometimes you hear about looping teachers, right, where they teach one grade level and the next level. There's a plus in that model for kids just because of that same teacher and understanding their kids as they start. But we don't have to have that model. We can have other structures that help staff to talk to each other. Again, sort of that idea of fresh start from the behavior, yeah, absolutely, but fast start from a learning perspective. Yeah.
I have a clarifying question. AJ, do you mind going back one slide? When I looked at this, I was assuming that this would be, let's say, the Rock Creek, this would be grade 10. So, but if we go back to the kindergarten one, it would be the Rock Creek kindergarten class. And we're looking at how many of those students, the entire grade, how many of those students are reading at a specific level? Is that not correct?
If you're thinking about your cohort, you're thinking about that whole, either whole grade level. If we were looking at, say, the department plan for teaching and learning, we'd be looking at the whole system, right? Kindergartners first graders, second graders. If we're looking at a building site plan and you were using this approach, then yes, Rock Creek would be looking at their kindergartners, their first graders, their second graders, and you'd have a display for every single one of your grades that you were looking at and being responsible for and accountable to, and very much not being, trying to make sure that we're moving students forward and making gains every year.
So then am I also correct in thinking that the cohorts would look, you could pull out subsets of those cohorts? So for example, we might look at just the highly capable students or just, I could name any subset, and we would do that intentionally to make sure that all of our different groups were getting.
Yeah, we would have to, as far as making them visible in a site plan, we'd have to be really conscious about what our N sizes were so that we weren't making individual students identifiable. It may be that if we were looking at subgroups, we might not look at the subgroup, we might look at the subgroup at the building level. We might not make it visible to the public in a site plan that's published online, maybe only at the district level, where we're looking at a whole grade level, because then the number of students is going to be big enough that no individual student would be identifiable in that. So we just always want to be really conscious of what we're putting in the published site plan. When we look at data with our building principals and we're thinking about that, it's okay to look at, I mean, obviously we know individual student information there, but we're always really cautious about what we actually put into the published site plans.
Thank you.
Question I have is just as far as attaching these measurable goals to our targets in the dashboard measures that we've used and zooming in and whether it's site plans or departments and so forth. Do you see that? What's the timeline of that? Is it next school year? Is it a few school years out? Is it what do you think it takes some time to develop obviously, but where do you think we're at in that journey?
I'm actually going to pass that ball over to our superintendent because we're having some conversations about that.
Dawn could answer, she's choosing not to, so we just talked about this. I think a part that Dawn stated that might have flew by folks, this is an early level of thinking around what this may look like. And there's a lot of eyes that still need to get on this to make sure that we're doing the best work we can to move forward with our goals. And one of the next spots where this will get brought up is going to be the upcoming ELT meeting with our principals. And so Dawn and I will engage in a conversation, and Lindsay with our principals regarding this. And we anticipate moving the work forward this spring so that all of our buildings and our departments have a picture in their head what the expectations are so that we're viable and ready to go next fall. It's ambitious, but, but
One
Dawn's
of the
right
things
there.
that we find is when you're just looking at a blank template, you actually make judgments that maybe aren't inaccurate. So when we're actually working with our principals and thinking through this, we'll actually look at it with real data in it so that we're able to say, what does it help us to understand and what are the limitations that might be present. So we're looking forward to it.
The other part I would add, just to be clear, there's implications in terms of this data as well, in terms of staffing, to implement a plan like this. It takes hours and hours and hours of staffing time that people just sit around. So there's stuff to figure out still.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I think we're set. Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. We're going to move on to agenda item 5.06, which is an action item to approve the 2022-23 Management Program Plan grant FP217. Please have a motion to approve agenda item 5.06.
Yes, I move to approve 2022-23 heavy capable program iGrant FP217.
A second.
Seconded, and Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Don Wickley, is still at the podium. Thank you for sticking around, and what do you have for us with this program?
as you'll recall, this is just an annual program plan that is put in front of school boards. It's actually a little bit different program plans. The rules around them tend to vary at OSPI, and the highly capable one is actually an interesting one that you put everything through to OSPI, it gets approved, you then bring it to the board, because they know that the board is well aware of what the program is that's being implemented. We bring it to you to be approved, and then it allows us to tick the final box with OSPI so that then they release our funds. And so really no substantive program changes have been made. You'll recall that Chris and Michelle Smart and a couple of our teachers were here in October, and really you got to hear voices from the people that were really behind the program and kind of gave that big picture overview of things. One piece that we are working on and we included in the cover memo is just as we continue to refine our budget and coding of things, we are looking with HiCap at trying to get even a little bit more granular in how we're coding so that it's a little easier to be able to pull out what's paid for for the program funding and we get through this, what's paid for through basic education, and what would be paid for through levy funds. So that's certainly something with Lori and Bill and I as we continue to try to kind of refine things that would be an iteration that you'll see in next year's budget.
Absolutely.
First of all, huge thank you. Thank you so much for this so far. Second of all, I'm just a little curious as to the nonverbal component. It's like the nonverbal testing. What were you doing there? Because I didn't see anything for that. I thought it would.
So, are you thinking about, so for our highly capable students when we do screening?
Yeah.
And so what happens with screening is we do screening at grade 2, and it's across all of the students at grade 2. And then based on that screening assessment, we identify the students that are kind of in that top chunk, and then they get to go through another couple days of testing. So they do the COGAT, then they do the ITDS fuller forms. And then based on the results of those two assessments, that's what identifies students for discovery.
Okay.
And then with the middle school program, that has expanded in the last couple of years, where we have the language arts and social studies ICAP classes. There's been a lot more interest on the part of families and students in doing testing at 5th grade and at middle school grades. It used to be that there wasn't really any big advantage to being tested if you didn't get identified in elementary. So there's definitely been more testing happening, or more families interested in testing because of the middle school program. And then high school, of course, is just open to anybody who wants to take an AP or college and high school. You don't have to be gifted. So there's really no advantage for students to test after they get through middle school.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. That's great, thank you. And that will bring us to, go ahead and call the roll. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye, motion passes 4-0. Thanks, Don. That brings us to agenda item 5.07, action to approve the print shop Konica machine lease extension. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 5.07, the Konica machine lease?
I move to approve the print shop Konica machine lease extension.
I second.
First and second, thank you so much. And we've got the Assistant Director of Operations, Kyle Litt, at the podium to talk to us about this lease.
Good evening. It's the extension of the lease that we currently have in place due to COVID. Printing then was expected, according to the people that work on machines, that the use just wasn't there, so they were able to extend our lease by 3 years, actually $200 less per month, just around $200 less per month. Just continuing with the same.
Questions? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion passes 4-0. Thanks, Kyle. And to stick around for agenda item 5.08, to action to approve resolution 2023-01 general surplus. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 5.08, resolution 2023-01?
I move to approve resolution 2023-01 general surplus.
Second.
Welcome back.
Copy that.
Good to see you. Copy that, I get it.
I'm trying to reach AJ's level. For this, we have some items in surplus that we are able to, we're not able to use them in the districts. There is a threshold of if items reach $100, then we get a percentage back, 50%. If they don't reach that threshold, we don't move back. These are items that are surplus that we just can't use in a certain program. We just use them.
Questions on this one?
And just to confirm for anybody who might be watching online, this is just standard practice, am I correct? Yes.
And I actually really appreciate the information you provided this time. I learned something from just that overview of the process, the fact that it needs to be $500 for us to get anything out of it, the percentage split and so forth. It was just very interesting. So appreciate that. Other questions? Okay. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Hood. Moves us on to agenda item 5.09, the first reading of revised policy and procedure 3230, student privacy and searches, and assistant director, actually acting director of human resources, Jason Krause, is making his way to the podium. Greetings. And here to answer some questions from the board. What do you have for us?
We have an update that follows some WASDA recommendations. It moves detailed information about conducting searches to the procedure, which is going to eliminate risks that policy and procedure might conflict, and then reorganize the order of it, but there are no substantive changes to policy.
Questions? Tracy? Students?
And just to clarify, thank you, Mr. Krause, I appreciate that. And for anyone who's watching, the lack of generation of questions doesn't mean board members haven't read through it and had conversations. It means sometimes it's in a one-on-one meeting. And so appreciate the clarity and also the explanation that went into this, so thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 5.10, the first reading of revised policy and procedure 5004 infectious control program. Director Jennifer Lyons is here to present and answer questions for us. Good evening. Thanks for being here.
Okay. Do y'all want me to read it or? Absolutely here. Because y'all have it ahead of time. So basically this just removes the COVID statements that we had before. The main change that's in the document is there is some language. Do we have it up there? Because I didn't bring my copy. There's some language.
Might be in the procedure.
Yeah, it is in the procedure. A little further, AJ. Thanks, appreciate it. Keep going, keep going. There's a lot taken out, which is great.
Is it?
What am I seeing? I'm missing it.
It's 5004 and it's the policy. It's got.
There's a
bottom
particular there's a particular line where it talks about legal requirements for following the law in regards to infection control. And we're already doing that. There you go. So preventing, suppressing, and controlling contagious and infectious diseases, the district will follow lawful regulations, orders, and proclamations about preventing, suppressing, and controlling contagious and infectious diseases. My assumption in reviewing the WASDA recommendations is that this was placed there when they take out the COVID to specifically say that we're still going to comply with King County Public Health, the governor's mandates, and anything else. So that's what they're saying. And we're going to do that. And I think this is also to assure that as we have seen cases of measles, varicella, and RSV, and although there's not a vaccination for RSV, there are vaccinations for the others, and we're seeing big influxes of, as you'll know, refugees coming in. So it's making sure that we're compliant with making sure that those people, when they enter our school district, are compliant with the law. So there are lots of districts that don't exclude students. And so what they're saying now to districts is, you're going to exclude students because our communities are changing. Does that make sense? Okay. So they're actually telling other districts that don't do what we already do, thanks to Annette and Mike letting us do this. Some schools do not exclude children based on immunization status. Our school district can try and work with administrators and alert parents about what local legislation is, and then we work with them to keep them in school as long as possible, but we will exclude them if necessary. That's a last, we case manage those students, and so we provide them with lots of information. Part of what AJ was doing ties into what the nurses do regularly. We send them letters in Polish and Ukrainian and Russian, whatever we need to do, and provide them with, in the state we have King County Public Health has all sorts of clinics where we can direct people. So we're case managing students so that they aren't excluded from school. But while still saying, if you aren't immunized or you haven't gotten, there's ways to go around that also, certificate of exemptions and stuff. But this is telling school districts that you have to follow the law. There are a lot of districts that just don't.
You can scroll down this maybe so that you can see those are significant.
Yeah, this has obviously been an active policy. We saw this just in November, as it was updated. So,
right.
I appreciate the.
And a lot of this has to do with work that Scott and Tracy would do. So things that were excluded, we're taking out policies and procedures about. Are we going to ask employees to provide information? And we still do upon entrance into the school program. So whenever I get a policy like this, I actually send it to Tamara and say, hey, I think that Tracy and Scott should review this too. So that they know what we're required to do upon hiring.
Questions? Just thank you, Jennifer, for you and your team and all the great care you put towards our students and staff. Appreciate that.
And I would point out that it does say volunteers too, and our WASDA recommends that, and so we do that. Sure. So whoever does our volunteer screening, that's part of the process.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 5.11, the first reading of revised policy 6230, relations with others. And Bill Hernandez, chief accountant, is making his way to the podium to answer some questions for us. Bill?
Hello. All right, policy 6230 has historically been centered around conflicts of interest when working with vendors. No changes have been made to any of that language in the board policy. However, we did make an addition per WASDA's recommendation to this policy by adding language around third-party receiving for online fundraisers and ticket sales. As you all know, we are continuously growing to be a more electronic-based, paper-based economy. And that being said, we need to have the opportunities to expand our avenues for how we sell tickets online. An example that we currently use right now is at the high school development program, using Lotix. Pete, you and I had numerous conversations about this in the past, and there are other avenues that we're currently exploring in regards to letting ticket sales, EEP payment system online instead of cash and check. A multitude number of options that we can see down the road. So this is just one step into the vast opportunities that we can see here shortly.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. That takes us to agenda item 5.12, which is the first reading of revised policy 6630, driver training and responsibilities, and Director of Transportation, Tahoma. This is all on his way. See us all. Thanks for being here.
Seems like every time I get to see you, we have to smell where the chins are. Just to let you know this morning at 3 o'clock, we were good.
You've done well the last 3 days. Keep it up.
WASDA update on policy 6630 basically just had to do with cleaning up some language for driver requirements. What they really did is they took a lot of wordy paragraphs and shortened them down into information that as we read it, and drivers can read it, was more pertinent into what it really meant, rather than reading it in a lot of different locations. One thing we found out that we thought was more useful, after I shared with my office staff, was we found a better way to take this material now that we have some of it and provide it to our drivers and create binders so they'll have that out there so they can visit with that more often than we said in the drivers room. So there was no significant change in anything we had.
Great. I just want to take a second to reflect on, we've got a number of policies that come before us tonight, we typically do, but I just really appreciate how we've kept up on the policies and continue to keep this really strong and current. And for those watching, each of these, it goes through a rigorous process before it comes before us. And there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that we're doing the right thing for our system, that we're also compliant with the laws and regulations and so forth. And there's a lot of policies and procedures in here, and you're doing a really good job. So, Mr. Wheeler, I appreciate your work in that, and everybody else that's involved in touching on this. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thank you. All right. And that brings us to agenda item 5.13, which is our financing and enrollment report. Chief Accountant Bill Hernandez is going to reprise his role in the podium. Good to see you.
Hello again.
Right.
AJ, if you could page 2 for me, please. Thank you. Starting out on the expenditure side of things first, January expenditures finished 12.9 million, bringing year-to-date expenditures to 63.1 million, or roughly 38% of our estimated annual expenditures. A couple of timing issues here, little unique accounting nuances, so bear with me here. January expenditures finished about $165,000 over what we had budgeted. This is due to a change in the district's methodology for how we compensate our national board certified teachers, as well as some of those miscellaneous repairs, due to maintenance expenses, and some HVAC upgrades. Going back to the national board certified teachers expense, this is where it gets a little confusing. Historically, we paid for these bonuses throughout the year, but to streamline the process this year, we've made the option to pay off all of these bonuses in January. That being said, the district receives the majority of its funding for these bonuses in July. Any members can carry the deficit in that account until July, or return back to them revenue neutral. Again, any money that we receive for national board certified teachers, we get, we pay it out. It's supposed to be in theory revenue neutral, so zero gain. Jumping over to the revenue side, AJ, if you go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. This is something that you've seen every month since November, just a reconciliation of where we budgeted to finish the amount of 9.4 million. And again, that was projected and approved by the board last July, as well as some of the major changes on the revenue and expenditure side that have happened throughout the year that we're going to know about, and where we think we're going to finish as of right here, right now, today. No major changes were made from last month, so we budgeted to finish minus 9.4, reduction of $9.4 million to our fund balance. We're still estimating to reduce our fund balance by now, for the reason you see here. So no changes from last month. One thing that I wanted to point out, if AJ, if you can go to this, the very last slide, number 12. Now that we're halfway through the academic school year, I wanted to show you all where we stand in terms of our enrollment comparisons against our neighbors. If you were to look at our pre-COVID enrollment, January 2020, and compare it to this January 2023, you can see the vast majority of school districts throughout King County have seen a deficit in their enrollment. And this is something that we are all aware of. You can see our neighbors in Kent, they're down 5.1% of roughly 1,300 students. It's a similar story, they're down almost 8%, or roughly 1,600 students in Bellevue, who is all over the news right now, down 1,900 students, or almost 9.5% from the pre-COVID numbers. Just a good time for us to reflect halfway through the academic school year of, hey, we're doing pretty darn good. We're almost back to our pre-COVID numbers, and in fact, we're less than 0.5% away from that amount. Especially that now that Lori and I are going through and budgeting for next year and trying to come up with our enrollment numbers for next year, we're in a really, really thankful a situation where we are seeing growth in our enrollment for next year, whereas other districts around this, they're actually seeing even worse decline. So just to get a reminder, we're in a pretty good spot.
Questions for Bill?
Can you explain to me again LEA funds?
LEA. Yeah. AJ, can you go back up to slide 3 for me? So the LEA funding is our local effort system that we get to close the gap between how much we went out for in our lending and how much we could have collected because of our crazy amounts of assessed valuation that we've seen, the assessed valuation growth we've seen over the last 2 years. We no longer qualify for the amounts that the state offers in LEA funding, which is why we have a deficit of 1.8 million. So basically just take the 1.8 million, it's completely gone because of those factors outside of our control. This is something that we went to Olympia with Mike and all of our partners and students, and this was our #1 recommendation for our state legislators of, hey, we would like to see hold harmless agreements until we are able to go out for another levy, so that way we don't lose this 1.8 million this year.
Yeah, I guess the other part I would add that's always been frustrating with it is it's in the spring when we get access through OSPI to what we should expect to budget for LEA based on the state's numbers. So the state gives us an estimate of assessed valuation that we're going to see. We budget moving forward with that last spring. And then early this fall, actually late summer, early fall, is when it was fall. We started hearing inklings of, from King County, that your AV growth may be higher than what the state thought. And then the AV growth actually just recently was released. That's when we found out that even though the state, using their formulas that we go onto their website to do this budgeting on, because the AV growth was so much, basically it's 1.8 million in LEA funds that we won't be getting. And so that's part of why we've been talking with our legislators about hold harmless.
And I'll just remind the board that like many of us do, I'm the finance rep for the board, so I meet in advance with Bill and with Lori and with Mike to talk through all these materials and kind of scrub it in a deeper way. Anyway, just as a reminder to those watching that takes much practice. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. That's going to take us to section 6 of our agenda, and that's the meeting management portion of our agenda. We'll go to agenda item 6.01, an action item to approve our consent agenda. May I please have a motion to approve our consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. That motion passes 4-0. And that brings us to agenda item 6.02, an action item to approve certificated personnel report. May I please have a motion to approve our certificated personnel report?
I move to approve our certificated personnel report as revised.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? None. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion passes 4-0. We'll move to agenda item 6.03, which is an action item to approve our classified personnel report. May I please have a motion to approve our classified personnel report?
I move to approve our classified personnel report as revised.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion passes 4-0. And we will move to agenda item 6.04, an action item to approve our coach personnel report. May I please have a motion to approve our coach personnel report?
I move to approve our coach personnel report as revised.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. That motion passes 4-0. Thank you so much. And that brings us to agenda item 7.01, which is our adjournment. And I will call this adjourned at 8:39. Thank you so much for being here, and everyone drive safe. Thank you. Don't
Great.